Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I'm your host Louis Sung, and today is the day that the NFL Draft officially begins. It is Thursday, so that means that the first round of the NFL Draft is going to be starting, and we at 5 Reasons Sports are going to be watching, believe it or not. Even though the Miami Dolphins do not have a first round draft pick, we are going to be keeping a very close eye on this. I believe we are actually going to be having a live stream just in case something ridiculous happens, so we will be on hand, ready to react to it should something happen. But what I want to talk about right now is we've been doing some mock drafts and we've been discussing who the Miami Dolphins should select, and that's all fine and good, but this is Fins Nation. And so the thing about Fins Nation is that I always wanted it to be about what people are talking about, just like with Pulse of Fins Nation. So I went ahead and I asked the question on Twitter, who do you want to see the Miami Dolphins draft with the 51st overall pick? Now, granted, since tonight is the first round, this isn't very relevant to right this second, but considering that Friday is when we're going to find out once and for all who are going to be the Miami Dolphins' top rookie contributors, at least on paper, I thought it would be a good idea to find out who exactly is it that the Miami Dolphins fans out there want the Miami Dolphins to pick with the 51st overall pick. And the answers that I got back all seem to shift in a very specific area. And I'm going to go into everything that I saw, everything that was discussed. I'll go into who was the consensus one. I'll go into some of the wild cards that were there. But before we go ahead and do that, I just want to go ahead and mention that this show is brought to you by You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? You Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, or curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as You Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, You Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, You Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options, such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands. You also can get performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications if you so desire. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at You Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to You Brake Wheel Fix, or you can contact them at 305-748-0112 and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, one of each is totally up to you to decide. Choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat, and if you choose right, you win. They give you free squares over there, special Taco Tuesday promotions, Flex Friday specials to where you can get your money back if you lose or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. With offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you're any kind of a fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, spell that out, FIVE, PrizePicks.com, who we at 5 Reasons Sports are proud to have as our sponsors. Alright, so to steal a line from my other show, let's just take a look at the pulse of Fins Nation, shall we? So again, I asked the question, who do Dolphins fans want them to actually draft with the 51st overall pick? And a lot of names came up, and I know that I can always count on my friend Chris Early, otherwise known as Duke, among his closest friends, which I am proud to be a part of. He gave me a whole long list of players that he wanted to pick. That included the likes of Darnell Washington, Sam Laporta, Joe Tipman, Jahmyr Gibbs, Matthew Bergeron, Steve Avila. There's a whole long line of people here. But at least one guy keeps coming up over and over and over again. So I had one person just straight up tell me Sam Laporta, which is actually the guy that I ended up drafting in my mock draft on Monday, but we ended up passing him up on Tuesday when I did the Pulse of Fins Nation live one, in order to take a defensive tackle instead. Now, I still feel like that my pick is better simply because I'm biased and also because I really want the offense to have every position taken care of to some extent. But one name, again, keeps coming up. And the longer that I think about it and the more that I learn about what this player is, the more that I start to feel like there might actually be a possibility that he would be available for the Miami Dolphins to draft if they felt so inclined. And that player, remarkably enough, is Georgia tight end Darnell Washington. Now, One has to wonder, how in the world did somebody like Darnell Washington fall all the way to the Miami Dolphins with the 51st overall pick? No mock draft simulators that I have ever seen, aside from one, which is why I actually disqualified it, has ever allowed for Washington to fall all the way that far into the second round. Again, you look at this guy and you see all of his traits. 6'7", 264 pounds. At the combine, he ran a 4.64 40-yard dash. For a dude his size, that is incredible. And not only that, aside from his untapped potential as a pass catcher, his blocking is probably some of the best in this draft as far as tight ends go. Now, I'm not saying he's the best tight end prospect in the draft at this point. Of course, I may have mistakenly thought that because of all the hype that he was getting, but there are other people, such as like a Dalton Kincaid, who would actually be a better fit, but obviously he's somebody who is going to be much more of a sure thing. But if we're talking about just sheer raw potential for what the person could be, Darnell Washington seems to be the most talented guy. He has all the physical raw traits that would be required of somebody who would become an elite tight end. And the longer I think about this, the more I start to think that there is a distinct possibility that maybe the Miami Dolphins could actually get lucky. Maybe there is the distinct possibility that if all else fails, they could actually trade up and not have to trade up terribly high in order to get their hands on him. Because other teams that need tight ends, they're obviously going to pick the other two first. So Dalton Kincaid will probably go first, and there will be other guys up there as well. But as far as sheer raw potential, this guy is a beast. And there's probably a reason why this guy kept coming up over and over again. My good friend Eldon Jensen, who we used to work with FinManiacs a long time ago. I still talk to him all the time. Darnell Washington, he wants Darnell Washington. Part of it was joking, but the fact that he even brought it up tells me that he would really like to have this guy. Of course, Duke brought him up in his list. Another person on Twitter, David Nicholas, said he wanted Darnell Washington, who said at worst he's an extra offensive tackle to protect Tua, but the ceiling could be Gronk-like, Rob Gronkowski. So now we had heard that about Hunter Long as well, but we all know that that didn't materialize into anything at all. But here you have Darnell Washington, who is much more matching of the physique of a Rob Gronkowski. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He got a good 40 time, but in practice, just because you run a good 40 does not necessarily mean you're super fast on the football field, if that makes any sense. Just because you have a good straight line speed, are you really that quick? Are you agile? And Darnell Washington has a lot of really good skills, but he tends to have a long stride in some ways. He kind of lumbers into routes, but even that can be worked on. And again, with a dude his size, again, he's 6'7". That's incredible. Could you imagine? You thought Mike Gesicki going up and catching passes was impressive, and he was 6'5". You add an extra 2 inches to that, and the big-bodied receiver that he could potentially be, and then you add on his potential to block, Darnell Washington would be perfect. The final piece of the puzzle, and would make Durham Smythe and Eric Saubert and whoever else you want to throw into, they would basically be obsolete after a couple of years. So that would be the end of Durham Smythe's career in Miami, or at the very least, a ticking time clock will be put on it. So besides the obvious fact that Darnell Washington is the obvious favorite for who Dolphins fans actually want the Miami Dolphins to draft at the 51st overall pick, there are some other names that were thrown in there, and some of them make sense, and then there are some of them that were obviously just not realistic, because I did have a couple of people tell me Will Anderson Jr. because he's a top 5 talent. Well, again, that's extremely unrealistic. You know why? Because the Dolphins don't have a top 5 pick. They don't have a top 10 pick. They don't even have a top 32 pick. Thank you very much, Bruce Beal and Stephen Ross, for that. So the idea of getting Will Anderson, just go ahead and throw that aside. It's not going to happen. It would have to be a Laramie Tunsil level of horrible for something to happen with him in order for the Miami Dolphins to even have a ghost of a chance of drafting someone like him. So let's just move on from that. So another name that did come up a couple of times is actually Jahmyr Gibbs. So again, the whole running back situation, we've heard rumors that Mike McDaniel would be pounding the table to move up and get Jahmyr Gibbs if he fell far enough where it seemed like a trade-up was realistic. And I get it. I understand it completely. Jahmyr Gibbs would be a perfect fit for this offense. He had his ability to catch passes in the backfield, his ability to cut and get speed going. He's a really good running back, and he'll be perfect fit for this offense. And then, continuing the running back discussion, there was also a comment a couple of times that they're saying, oh, we want to just have Dalvin Cook with the 51st overall pick. just to address some things that are going on, it does seem like it's very likely that Dalvin Cook wants to come to Miami in a very similar vein as the whole Jalen Ramsey situation. All the rumors that have been going around Dalvin Cook seem to be centered around the Miami Dolphins. And we've discussed that already in the past, and we'll go ahead and briefly touch on it again. But it seems to me like we hear more and more rumors that the Vikings are trying to set up some kind of a trade of some kind. I still think that if push comes to shove, the Dolphins could just wait them out and say, you know what? You better just take whatever we're willing to give you, because you're either going to have to give them to us because this is where Dalvin Cook wants to go, or you're going to have to just go ahead and cut him, and then we can just try to negotiate with him that way, and we can have him at our price and whatever price he decides he is worthy. So the Minnesota Vikings now find themselves in a very uncomfortable situation because Dalvin Cook, if it is indeed true that he wants Miami more than any other team, which again, it does seem like that is the case. Every rumor that we've heard about has everything to do with the Miami Dolphins. No other team is really being talked about as a quote-unquote landing spot for Dalvin Cook. All the rumors surround the Dolphins. And that would be fine. Not that Dalvin Cook is a terrific scheme fit. We've already gone over the whole scheme fit situation. This is not an offense that kind of demands a power running back like a Dalvin Cook. But then again, we've already discussed the whole picking talent versus scheme fit. And Dalvin Cook, whether anybody wants to discuss it or not, yes, he is a little bit injury prone. Yes, he has his issues with making sure that he stays healthy. And no, he's not a particularly good scheme fit. But he's an elite level talent at running back, and you don't just pass up elite level talents when you can get them. So if Dalvin Cook really wants to come to Miami and he wants to try to chase a Super Bowl with the Miami Dolphins, I guarantee you who would be happy about that, Tua Tagovailoa. He would love to have Dalvin Cook, I'm sure, because we've already discussed what the pros and cons of that would be. Yes, he would be a little bit expensive because you don't want to really pay a running back that much cash, especially if he's not always going to be on the football field. Then again, we still have Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and Savon Ahmed who can hold down the fort should something happen to Dalvin Cook. So it's not the biggest loss. It's just a little bit of a luxury loss. But if you have Dalvin Cook in the backfield, and you still have Tyreek Hill, and you still have Jalen Waddle, and you still have the likes of a Braxton Berrios running around in the slot, and you've got all these pieces, and you still have Tua, and you manage to keep him healthy, if you have Dalvin Cook back there, then teams are not going to be able to just go all out and sell out to stop the pass. They're going to have to keep some guys in the box to make sure that Dalvin Cook doesn't run all over them. That kind of thing matters. Again, talent does matter, and at some point, talent does overcome scheme fit. Dalvin Cook would be perfect for that. Now, would I trade the 51st overall pick for Dalvin Cook? The answer to that question, straight up, is no, I would not. Because, number one, I still think the Miami Dolphins can get a really good player at the 51st overall pick. Is it going to be someone like a Darnell Washington, who is the overwhelming consensus pick in Fins Nation? No, I still don't think that's going to happen, but if it were, then that would be a miracle upon miracles, and I would absolutely be ecstatic about having him because he is a very, very solid player, and he could be a terrific elite tight end in a year or two. But even if they don't get someone like him, if they get like a Sam Laporta, or if they go ahead and get a defensive tackle, or if they get an offensive tackle or a guard, or whoever they end up deeming worthy of the pick, they can still get a very good player with the 51st overall pick. And what in the Minnesota Vikings situation gives them any sort of leverage to say, well, we will only accept this level of compensation? Guys, the Minnesota Vikings have no leverage. Number one, it is well known that the Vikings want to move on from Dalvin Cook. They do not want to pay him. They do not like the fact that he is so injury prone. They do not like that he is so expensive. And Dalvin Cook does not feel wanted in Minnesota. Dalvin Cook supposedly, allegedly, wants to come to Miami. So what leverage do the Minnesota Vikings have to say, you know what, we don't want to trade him for this, we'll only take this? Are you serious? What leverage are you trying to push? The Miami Dolphins, if I'm the Miami Dolphins, I'm looking at the Minnesota Vikings dead in the eye, and I'm saying, do you want to do this pick swap for next year or not? Because we're basically doing you a favor in a way. We're taking Dalvin Cook's money off of your books, and we're getting rid of what would inevitably be a training camp nightmare because he's already not showing up for voluntary workouts. You can tell that this is going to go sour even further the longer that he sticks around. So it's going to become a disaster for the Minnesota Vikings to hang on to Dalvin Cook. So either cut him and let the Dolphins negotiate with him that way, or just take whatever the Dolphins offer and say, thank you very much, have a nice day. That's the honest truth with the whole Dalvin Cook situation. That's what I would do. But getting Dalvin Cook, in my eyes, disqualifies the Jahmyr Gibbs discussion. Because why are you going to go ahead and invest in a Jahmyr Gibbs and then also have Dalvin Cook, and then you still also have Raheem Mostert, and you also have Jeff Wilson, and you still have Savon Ahmed, who I know that the Dolphins really like. So you can't have that many running backs. You can't. I don't think the Dolphins will have that many running backs because you need to have a third quarterback on the roster, and you're going to have to cut corners somewhere. It's not going to be at wide receiver. I know that. And based on last year, I sincerely have trouble believing that they're going to go ahead and cut corners at cornerback and say, you know, we don't need that many defensive backs. We'll be okay. No, you almost weren't last year. It was a miserable experience for everybody involved. So that's what Finn Nation seems to be wanting. They want Darnell Washington more than anybody else. I do have a couple other names in here. Steve Avila came up a couple of times. DeJuan Jones came up a couple of times. There was a suggestion of trading back and getting another third-round pick. Yeah, I mean, they could do that if they really wanted to. That would help with the whole not enough pick situation. And if they really are looking at a player that is going to fall a little bit in the second round, maybe Sam Laporta does fall a little bit further. Maybe you could get away with it. It's kind of rolling the dice a little bit, but we'll see. Or alternatively, if you want to go with the Alfredo Arteaga approach and you want somebody like maybe a Tucker Kraft or something along those lines at tight end, then you could afford to go a little bit further back in the second round before you have to end up drafting him. And then, of course, I got some other guys. Again, Matthew Bergeron came up. And then one person says, a superstar, don't care what position. Listen, I get it. I know that you want the best player possible, but at 51, it's very unlikely that you're going to be getting a superstar player, unless maybe Darnell Washington. And Sam Laporta is really good too, guys. Let's not act like Sam Laporta is just not a good player. He's actually a very fantastic guy. So we'll see what happens there. We're going to go ahead and call it here. Thank you all so much for listening. If you haven't already done so, make sure you check out U-Brake Wheel Fix. They are the complete automotive wheel solution for any situation you may have, or if you just want to upgrade your ride, you can reach out to Market and staff at 305-748-0112 or online at ubrakewheelfix.com. Shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Get an estimate in just minutes so you can upgrade your ride to look like the ultimate Dolphins fantasy. And of course, you can go to PrizePicks.com. They are the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can go ahead and make some serious money by just picking the over or the under on specific players' fantasy projections. You don't have to guess the entire team. All you have to do is just guess the particular player in mind. So again, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. So go over there to PrizePicks.com. Use that promo code, put your $100, they'll give you $100 for free, and you can start winning today. That's going to be it. Thank you all so much for listening. The draft is tonight. Get excited. It's finally starting, and we will see you all next time for another episode of Fins Nation.